Welcome to the Men of Honor podcast. My name is Kuri, your host, and today we're going to be talking about sexual addiction. And this has been inspired by a message that I got in my DMs. And every time I say DMs, I just can imagine my son looking at me thinking, oh, wow, why is he using that vernacular? So it's quite hilarious. But the subject is not actually hilarious. It's something that is very serious. And it's something a conversation that I had with somebody because they'd heard some of my podcasts, and I openly talked about masturbation and watching porn as a means of escaping trauma. It's something that resonated with them, and we got on the conversation, and the topic went on to sexual addiction. And before I go any further, I've got to just put this disclaimer out there that I'm not a doctor, I am not a psychiatrist or anything like that. This is just information of stuff that I've learned by myself. And what made me learn about this is that I've come from a background where when I was about 18 or 19, I started going out clubbing. And when I started going out clubbing, there was this common theme where whether I was with friends or just watching people, I wanted to pick up girls like everybody else, just as much as the girls were looking to meet guys. I would go out there, and then as I'm trying to talk to the girls, I'll come across as weird, and I got rejected quite a few times, and then just decided not to pick up girls. But I would see some guys would be confident and would speak to girls and would kiss, and then eventually take them at home. And yes, as adults, they would have consensual sex that was enjoyable and everything like that. So I became very obsessed in what causes attraction between two people. And so the desire wasn't to get notches on how many girls I sleep with. It was just the simple fact that how do I get to meet somebody that's fun and exciting, and how do I escalate that into attraction, and so on and so on. So it became an absolute obsession when it comes to this. And me and my friend, we started really trying to figure out what was happening. This is the infancy of internet, so we got into really knuckling down with this. But then by the time we actually got really good at this, so we would literally get into a club and be able to identify pretty girls and work our way into speaking to them, and then actually go to as far as taking them home, and became a repeatable thing that we could do. And because of that, it was something that the intentions were to just get good at it, but I think the intentions of actually getting good was to mask the actual trauma that I had personally. So to be quite frank, a lot of people, or in fact, in my case, I was narcissistic, or I still am probably to a certain degree. But the fact that I was narcissistic, and also I lacked the understanding of emotional connection or intimacy. So those are things that I lacked. So those are the things that became the driving force in terms of wanting to learn this and getting good. And over the years, I started masking that and using the skills that I'd learned in order to cope with what I didn't deal with the actual thing. So fast forward to getting married and everything else, those things end up coming up again. So even though I met my partner and we got to a point where we both agreed that it was a good idea for us to get married based on love and connection and everything else, without treating that narcissistic side of it, the trauma that I faced in terms of emotional connection and everything else, it started leading me down a path which was self-destructive, and not just for me, but also self-destructive from my actual family and marriage. So having sort of given you an idea of where I've come from and why it's something that I been obsessed in terms of reading about and figuring out is the reason why now this guy started talking about, and I had enough information to actually guide him. And the one thing that we needed to establish wasn't that it was the fact that people tend to say sexual addiction, and they base it on sexual behavior. And what I mean by that is or types of sex, actually, not sexual behavior, types of sex. So, for instance, if you've got a fetish of bondage or whatever, because there's some shame associated with it, they consider that to be sexual addiction. Or whether if it's a man who is married to a woman and then they occasionally have gay sex or something, they assume that is sexual addiction. Those are just fetishes or types of desires. Sexual addiction is when it moves from remember back in the day when you were a teenager and then you used to masturbate, so you find whatever magazine or go on the internet and then you see this, you're inspired to have an orgasm. So there's some inspiration that you've got an erection and you really just want to drop a load, and it's not based on the fact that you're stressed or anything. It's just the fact that you feel aroused. And most people who are at a healthy place in terms of sex, this is where they're at. So they have an inspiration and then they have an orgasm. But then there's a point where it becomes from inspiration to a compulsive, you're looking for that compulsive orgasm. So you move from not inspiration, but you're compelled to actually having that, and you're compelled based on how you feel emotionally and how the stress levels are within your life. So when you have to face or confront your internal dialogue, so your internal dialogue is something that is either constantly running based on the trauma that you faced, and your RAS, so your reticular activating system, which means that everything that you're supporting the internal dialogue, so everything that you're seeing externally that is supporting your internal dialogue that tells you you are rubbish, you're unattractive or whatever, all that stuff causes you to now causes you to actually go out and seek out to have that orgasm in order to just silence that internal dialogue, or at least bring your mind to a state of ease, look for a better term. So there's that compulsive behavior that ends up coming into your life, and depending whether you're married or not, or this is something that happens to many men, that it's a compulsive thing. It becomes from a one-day thing to a weekly thing, and it's a daily stuff. And sometimes people start having to do this 3 times a day, in order just to keep that state of ease within your body. And then where this is not quite the sexual addiction point, but because you still live a level of control, it's when it moves from compulsive to obsessive compulsive. So this is now when you are literally you need to do this in order to function, and to the point that you actually don't know how to function, because this is what is completely consuming your mind. So you're always on thinking about it constantly and every moment that you're doing. So you're not just masturbating at home when you're by yourself, but you're now even masturbating in your car, at work, any opportunity that you get in order to do that. And it's not just masturbation, but it's actually, you're now seeking out partners, you're seeking out so in the reason why I've gone this far and I'm talking about this is because this is a conversation that we had, and for obvious reasons I'm not going to say his name, but he had told me that even though he's married and everything else, he'd gone to as far as meeting prostitutes. And because he's a successful entrepreneur and he doesn't want any complications. He doesn't have the time to go and have an affair or anything like that. He prefers just to go and have a transactional type thing. And the thing is that I started diving a little bit deeper, that it's not the actual sex that is the driving factor. The driving factor is the fact that he just wants to feel desired, and that becomes the obsession. That the sex addiction is not the orgasm, and it's like the thing that it's almost the thing I've been trying to talk about in terms of the healthy side of the marriage. So even if you are married and having sex, we focus so much on the orgasm and we think that's what we want. But what we want is that emotional connection. And basically, I said, the thing that I've been working mostly on is definitely learning how to be intimate and having better emotional connections with my wife. And because of that, it makes it easier to actually relate. And because I was now at the compulsive stage, I haven't got to the obsessive compulsive, but because he's now at that obsessive compulsive, my actual advice was for him to get professional help. I think there is, if you're obsessive compulsive, at that point where the best thing is to speak to his wife, and then they both go into counseling and actually start working on it, and work with somebody who is professionally trained to deal with this. Because in fact, it's probably possible that he might actually have to sort of stop part of his life for a week or a couple of weeks just to try and get this thing sorted. But going back to what I was trying to say is, it's more important than ever that most men, because it's quite easy to point at him and judge and say, you know what, I'm not like that, and I'm not at that point, so I'm still doing this. And a lot of people do not actually go through the process of dealing with trauma or dealing with what's going on within the internal dialogue, and they do not know how to shut it off. And they found different ways of, at least putting their mind at ease. It might not be sex for you, but it might be something else. So there's other things that we do in order to numb ourselves, in order to stop ourselves from feeling, that turmoil. In fact, for lack of a better term, going through the hell that we have within ourselves. That the moment you're by yourself and there's nothing else happening that is external, that is an external stimulus, you are already in hell. So, and this is the reason why most people would masturbate and then go into this sort of track of trying to get that orgasm, not just the orgasm, but get into that process where they're constantly looking to get that fix in order to get the mind and the body into ease. So I've sort of gone round and round in trying to make different points. I hope this is it finds you in a place where you can actually get an idea of what's going on within yourself. If you find yourself that you're now at that stage of obsessive compulsive, you really need some help. There's quite a lot of places where you can go, and you can have tests online as well that it will tell you whether you're a sex addict. So you type in, I think it's called sex. I wish I had taken the note of that before I started the podcast. But there's you can type in sex addiction test and on Google, and then some of the websites will come up, so you can take the test. So there's a test that you can take to actually see if you are a sexual addict. And there's also information out there that you can help. That can help in terms of if you're compulsive, but you know that you're doing this in order to numb yourself. So there's information out there that you can get. What I'll do is that over the next few weeks, I'm going to start building some resources for everyone, especially in terms of the Men of Honor Facebook group. So people that are already struggling with this can, have a place to go and have confidence that it's confidential. So that being said, I know it's a very difficult, subject for me to unpack because it sort of reveals a lot about me, which is quite embarrassing. But there is a lot of shame when it comes to sex and sexual addiction and sexual behavior that is frowned upon. So I hope this is very helpful to someone. It's something that is it troubles me because when we started Men of Honor Facebook group, it's because of men that have committed suicide over the years, and this is a massive part of why they commit suicide, that they've had this internal dialogue that just gets amplified as they get older, as life changes and they go through challenges. And the more challenges that they face, the more they end up acting out sexually, or they find themselves in a place where they just do not know how to shut off that internal dialogue. So they've tried sex, they've tried drugs, they've tried different ways and different means of trying to do this. And in the end, they find that they're just by themselves and they've got nothing else but to end their life. So I really hope this is helpful. If you want to know more information, you can catch me on Instagram, which is Kuri Mahamba, so KuriMahamba on Instagram. Join the Men of Honor Facebook group. So Men of Honor Facebook group, you can join there and you can get in touch with me through there. So if you've got any questions as well, so you can send me a direct message on the Instagram. So thank you very much for listening. If you like this episode, please comment or share it. One thing I did realize recently, that some of the stuff I talk about is not easy to share to people because it's quite if you share it, people would be instantly put up their backs. They'll be instantly defensive. So like, why did you send me something about sexual addiction? Are you trying to say something? So I would imagine it's going to be very difficult to share. But if you know somebody that might be struggling with this, please share it to them so we can get that dialogue going on. Because I think sometimes it's such a thing of shame that nobody talks about it. And even though they want help, it does help just to speak to somebody who's experienced it and is on that journey of recovery. I'm just ahead of other people, and it's easy to look at it and say, "Oh, it's somebody else's problem." It's those guys have got the problem. I don't have that problem. I think it's not black and white. It's actually at a degree. So there's somewhere in the scale where you are. It might be low right now, but depending on how life hits, whether you get even more challenges, it might amplify and become a greater deal. So being able to actually go to the root of the problem, which is the trauma, is key. And this is exactly what we'll be talking about. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope this is useful and can meet you in your life where you need this. So thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you soon.